Good evening and welcome to the ZA Tech Show. I forgot to check the episode. I think it's 208, eh? I think so. Anyway, hello. My name is Simon Dingle. Welcome to the show. It's Monday night if you're watching the live version of this show, in which case you're probably fully aware of what day it is. If you're watching the podcast, we record live every Monday night, so check it out. Around 7 o'clock South African time. We do this every week, so check it out on our website, zatech.co.za. Live, as I said, my name is Simon. Joined this evening by Mr. Nicholas Callegari.
Hi.
Who has a day job in television.
Yeah, well, it's more video on demand.
You work in television,
Yeah.
whatever.
Behind
Whatever.
We change the way people watch TV.
I'm sure you do. DSTV Online.
One viewer at a time.
He used to be a journalist. That's why we allow him around these parts. People still contact us and pitch, and they're like,
I'm honoured.
our CRO is available next Monday. Will you interview him? To which I say, hell no, I will not. Because we don't allow industry guests on the show except for Nicholas Callegari.
Oh, well, thank you.
Because he has tattoos and he drinks whiskey.
I'm
And
blushing.
he used to have a respectable job.
No, but seriously, Simon, just on that note, PRs and people that pitch us should really take the time to listen to our podcast if they are going to pitch us stories. Because I struggle with exactly the same thing. Week after week, please won't you interview so-and-so? Please won't you do a phone-in with so-and-so? And immediately I respond with, our podcast has been running for how many years? Right? Have you ever listened to an episode? Because we have never, ever done a phone-in.
Yeah. Well, we've done Skype-ins.
Yes.
But never
still,
with industry guests.
Still. You know?
And I think, look, in the beginning we did allow one or two on. We had somebody from Vodacom and somebody from Neotel, and then we realized what a
definitely not in the last 3 years.
terrible idea that was.
So, anywho.
Anyway. That was Brett Haggard, who kind of just, introduces himself.
I do that
From
time to
Hypertext
time.
Media Communications. And also from the ZA Tech Show.
Yes, indeed. Yes.
Good
And
to
no,
see you,
we will
Bretsky.
not interview your spokesperson on the podcast.
Thanks for asking,
Can we
though.
interview you, Brett?
Mad love.
Totally. I always have something to say. Well, sometimes I don't, but it's very rare.
You should get a PR to pitch an interview to us, to you.
Somebody
That'd be
who's
awesome.
actually worth interviewing, but we'll just let him have his say anyway, is Mr. Arthur Goldstuck from Worldwide Works.
Good evening, Simon. Good evening, Nicholas.
How's it going?
Good evening, Brett, to whom I won't say anything about Chelsea winning the FA Cup on Saturday night.
Okay, we're not going to have another
It
football.
was a
And-
goal.
And finally, catching up with Liverpool in the number of FA Cups they've won.
Yes.
And also, we won't mention the fact that it was no goal. The whole ball has to cross the line.
Oh,
But aside from that, it's a fascinating weekend.
depends
So,
on where you're standing.
Did you see that sky today? Talk about blue, huh?
Where's my
Screw
map
y'all.
of the UK? I'm
Screw
convinced you
y'all.
guys wouldn't even be able to point Liverpool and Chelsea out on maps of the UK.
No,
I
totally.
can point
Chelsea's
out
where the
Stamford
buns
Bridge
come
on-
from, man.
Stamford Bridge on Google Earth is dazzlingly clear, but you actually have to first wend your way through the fashion capitals of Fulham and
Indeed.
Yeah.
and the like before you actually get to the bastion of quality football.
Right. So,
Manchester.
moving swiftly
Oh,
along.
you could leave right now.
I'm
pal.
not a
Okay.
football.
So, if you don't mind
Clearly.
us moving away from the world's most boring topic, let's talk about technology.
We could totally rope. Can I just say something? Arthur and I could probably rope technology into that discussion quite easily.
There's
sure
no
you could.
question. I have to tell you that the SMS security system used at Stamford Bridge was developed by South Africans, a South
That's
African
right.
company based
Well, let's
in
talk
Durban.
about the fact that besides for the television cameras involved, soccer is the most archaic sport in the world
Yes,
that
indeed.
hates technology.
Goal line technology, please. Anybody? Bueller?
We all
Anyway.
wish for it.
All right, so talking about archaic technology, Arthur's just come back from Florida and BlackBerry World.
Ouch.
Wow, jeez. Don't you mean blackberried world?
It's a
Right.
low-hanging fruit.
Ah.
All right. Seriously, though, BlackBerry's in a bit of trouble. But this... No, they aren't a sponsor
No, I was
anymore.
gonna- No.
And they have a sense of humor.
If you
They
guys-
know I'm joking.
Yes.
If you guys
Me
want to
too.
responsor the show, we very
Well, BlackBerry's here somewhere, I'm sure.
we very much welcome.
Doesn't have power, but it's yeah. All right. So, Arthur, first hand, you were sitting there
What was that?
when on your torch when the new CEO, Torsten Heinz, showed us what BlackBerry 10 will look like. And I have to say, it looks like they're finally doing the right thing. They're doing it very late, but they're doing
Yes.
it pretty well. Of course, none of us have used BlackBerry operating system 10, but it is looking rather sharp.
There were 3 key moments for me at BlackBerry World. The one was when Torsten Heinz stood up to deliver his keynote
Yeah.
and brought on Vivek Bhardwaj to demonstrate the BlackBerry 10.
Mm-hmm.
The next day at the press briefing, where he spoke about how they regretted the mistakes they'd made and how they know that they'd let customers and the company down, and they were focused on repairing the damage.
And that's
It was the
exactly
most-
the right thing that he needs to be saying.
Yep.
Exactly. It was the first time you'd really heard a contrite admission
Yes,
of not necessarily wrongdoing, but misdoing at RIM.
sure.
And that's the reason you needed to get rid of those ex-joint CEOs, because they could never bring themselves to make any admission
Although-
of the kind.
I think if there's a theme running through BlackBerry's current situation, it's doing things very late. Those CEOs should have been out there a lot sooner.
Oh, yeah.
BlackBerry 10 OS should have been with us a lot sooner. They should have had an SDK for the playbook a lot sooner. The playbook itself should have been out a lot sooner. It's just that seems to be the big problem, and the analysts have been saying it all along, is delivery. The products themselves are pretty cool. When they do get around to releasing SDKs for platforms, they do a really good job of educating developers and getting them on board. The one mistake they did make with the playbook, I felt, was that thing where the first 3,000 application developers got a free playbook, and you instantly got 3,000 of the worst applications ever developed, just so the guys could get a freebie.
Look, it shows a picture of my face when you boot it. It's awesome.
I think that is an additional point, but in fact that was maybe the 4th out of 5 main events. The 3rd main event was actually getting my hands on one of those dev alpha devices, as they call them, the prototype. They were giving them away to the first few lucky developers who registered for the dev jam at BlackBerry World, but they weren't giving them to the media. But I went to interview the head of RIM for Africa, Rob Bowes, and very fortuitously,
Great guy.
very interesting, very interesting. In fact, fascinating insights came out of that. But a real bonus of that interview was that sitting in the hotel suite with him was Vivek Bhardwaj,
Oh, wow.
who had his prototype with him, and he let me play with it for a while. And the experience of that keyboard was sheer magic.
Really?
Wow, okay.
I was able to type a couple of sentences that would have taken 60 characters per sentence or so, and I was able to type about 15 keystrokes per sentence to get
Now,
those
I mean-
sentences typed out.
BlackBerry's known for the keyboard, so they can't do this whole touch migration without nailing the keyboard solidly.
Exactly.
And they've had 2 false starts. The first was the Storm, where they came up with a revolutionary new haptic keyboard interface that completely backfired. But they need to nail the keyboard thing, because that's what
Yeah.
that's one of the things
Precisely.
people love BlackBerry for, is the speed and
Yeah.
the comfort of messaging on
Yeah.
the platform, right?
The keyboard is BlackBerry's legacy in terms of the smartphone, and they have to build on that legacy. So clearly a lot of thought has gone into how can we take a keypad, a virtual keypad, to a new level, as well as a physical keypad. So one of the key things that Torsten Heinz said at his press briefing the next day was to confirm that there would be physical keypads as well. There would be QWERTY keyboard BlackBerries in the next generation, because that was the one thing that was missing from his keynote presentation.
Yeah.
But the idea of taking the keypad to a new level and turning it into not just predictive and auto text, but almost artificial intelligence text is what BlackBerry's actually brought to BlackBerry 10. And people might say it looks like this keyboard, it looks like that one, or Microsoft has always had this technology. No way has it ever looked like this, and no way has it ever felt like this.
Does
And I
the
was dazzled
words,
by that.
the whole word suggestion thing, that work for you, where it kind of suggests words and you flick the one that you want onto the screen?
Yes, that's exactly what made it so quick. Because what it in effect does is it looks at the content of your mail up to that point, and then obviously there's a vast database of words, and not just words, but words that are related to each other. And it pulls out of that database what it seems to think is the most likely next word. And 2 out of 3 times it was there. The word I was going to type next
That's
was sitting
interesting.
there
Wow.
on the keyboard among the keys, and you just flick it up.
It
and
wasn't
there
an
is.
Afrikaans word, I'm gathering.
And
Lekker.
I tried lacquer and it didn't
But
come
I'm
up.
guessing you can add your own words.
Of course, you can add a dictionary, and
Does
also
it-
it learns the words.
I was
that
about
you
to
type.
say, does it learn on the fly?
It learns on the fly. But here's the other thing that's amazing about it: the keyboard itself, adapts to your fingers. And that I've never seen before. The size of the keyboard, the positioning. So if it keeps picking up that you clicking just on the edge of the keyboard and by mistake clicking on the screen, as you often do with the iPad, for instance, often
A
find
instead of
myself
an S, for example.
leaving
Q or whatever,
the keyboard or clicking on another email or closing an email when I was halfway through typing a message. You do that once or twice and it immediately picks up that that's your typical style of typing and moves the keyboard up ever so slightly.
That's pretty cool.
Very
That's
cool,
very,
yeah.
very rare.
Nice.
And if you're a very dainty typer, as I put in one of my columns, or you're a very clumsy typist, either way, it adapts to that and shrinks or expands the keys.
Look, I think we all want BlackBerry to do well. You know, we make jokes about their terrible situation, which aren't very funny if you work there. But I think, I mean, I'm a BlackBerry fan. I always have been. And, you know, I just reviewed their latest Bold for FinWeek, and I said this is a fantastic BlackBerry, but that's the problem. It's nothing's changed. It's still the same device that lost to the iPhone.
I read your review, and I in fact concurred 100% with that. It's a phone you can love, but you can't love the extent to which it's fallen behind other phones.
Well, it's like a 1974 Volkswagen Golf, right? Fantastic car, but not what you want today.
Sure.
Nothing wrong with it for its time, but it really needs to get with it. Now, what concerns me for BlackBerry is what we're learning with Windows Phone is that you can have a fantastic operating system with a fantastic interface. You can even have the apps being developed. But once somebody's roped into an operating system like Android or iOS, it's terribly difficult to get them to move away. And it's not because they don't like the new operating system or they have personal feelings about it. The problem is that you start finding applications for the things you need to do. Some of them cost a lot of money. You start getting your email working with it and all of your social networks. You get used to this ecosystem and you spend money and time sort of getting it working the way you want it to. And now the idea of having to go and find all these apps again, buy them again, or find alternatives and start from scratch on a new platform, that's where we're learning the real power of iOS and Android getting in on the ground floor with this whole smartphone thing.
You're so right. It's not about the 80% fit or the 90% fit. It's about the 10% that sits above that.
Yeah.
This is what I've found, you know, with iPhone specifically, because I've been on a mission to switch away from iPhone into Android for a long time. I really enjoy Ice Cream Sandwich as an OS. I think it's really, really good. Previously, I was using as an excuse the fact that it didn't have Instagram. As we know, a couple of weeks ago, Instagram arrived on Android, and I downloaded it. And guess what I found out? All right, I'm too attached to iMessage now. Okay, so there are little things like that just make it really difficult to move away from any one platform. I could imagine it would be as difficult for somebody on an Android or a BlackBerry. BBM, I think, is the one thing that's keeping people very, very locked to BlackBerry at the moment, because even though there are alternatives, I mean, somebody like me that lives outside of that ecosystem goes, well, why don't you just use WhatsApp? And that person will immediately say, no, but you don't understand, it's entirely different. BBM gives me something that WhatsApp doesn't, right?
Lot, and we've been reminded in the first bit of 2012 how quickly people can change platforms and change their mind and switch. I don't know one friend of mine on BlackBerry who doesn't use WhatsApp more than they do BBM at the moment. And the amount of people I know who have switched away from BlackBerry in the last 5 or 6 months has been ridiculous, almost without exception. Barring like my parents and one or two other people I know who are BlackBerry users, everybody has switched to something else now.
So
and getting them back is going to be tricky.
Indeed. I think the difficult bit as well is, I mean, and I don't want to be a doomsayer here by any means, but when Nokia started on its road towards recovery and rejuvenation and everything else, people were like, well, maybe it was just in time. Look at the ridiculous market share Nokia had, and it's still the biggest phone vendor in the world, and this, that, and the next thing. Now, BlackBerry finds itself very, very much in a similar position, right? It does have a massive installed base in Africa and emerging markets, but at the same time, that $99 Android phone is coming at it very, very strongly, all right? And there's a very, very short space of time that they can get that faith back behind them, and they can, deliver something new and interesting. Because I'm sorry, it's not going to take delivering a little bit of a better BlackBerry to keep people locked to the BBM platform. I think the data side of things, and it's still being the cheapest phone to get your data on, that value proposition is starting to fade really, really quickly. So So I don't know. They definitely have to do something new and revolutionary and overtake the other vendors again if they want to get that momentum back.
And funny enough, they are doing something quite revolutionary, but that's got nothing to do with the phone.
And
Okay.
what's
And
that?
this is what I believe is going to save BlackBerry, because I think they've lost the North American market.
Yeah.
And it's going to be very hard for them to win it back. They're going to have to do many innovative and revolutionary things on the phone itself over several years, not just a one-off, but continually. But what's going to save them is the incredible stature and status they've built up in the developing world. And I'll give you 3 examples. BlackBerry is the #1 smartphone in Mexico, the 11th most populous nation in the world, in Nigeria, the 7th most populous nation in the world, and Indonesia, the 4th most populous nation in the world. There you have 4 of the 11 biggest countries in the world where BlackBerry is the #1 smartphone, but that isn't the killer. The killer is the fact that these markets are only just beginning to migrate to smartphones. And BlackBerry has the cachet in those markets of being the aspirational phone of choice.
But again, you can see a switch
Yes,
like this in the
indeed.
marketplace. And I think at the moment, the reason they're doing so well is because of their unbeatable value proposition in markets like South Africa, where the only way to get unlimited data on a phone really is BlackBerry. And we've seen in markets where you can get
I specifically
unlimited...
didn't mention South Africa because it's not necessarily the unlimited data
Oh, really?
that's doing
So
it.
what is it in those markets that's
In
tying people
Nigeria in
in?
particular, one should watch a movie
First
on
to
YouTube.
market.
There's a movie called BlackBerry Babes, free to watch on YouTube, and it's a
Is it safe
Nollywood.
for work?
It's a Nollywood movie. It's not even made as an advert for BlackBerry North America to try and
Is that your pick of the
get
week?
the slackers.
So-
I'd say my pick of the week
Blackberry
is
Babes.
BlackBerry Babes, made in Nollywood, an hour and a quarter long movie you can download for free on YouTube, and it basically draws on the aspirational power of BlackBerry in Nigeria amongst the middle class, and the extent to which people will do anything to get a BlackBerry, and that is before the data plans have come into play.
But it's also in a market where BlackBerry was this first smartphone available, and they threw a hell of a lot of marketing budget at it. They were very astute in Nigeria, but they have they have early mover advantage in that market because iPhone is almost non-existent to this day in Nigeria.
The funny thing is the iPhone is quite prevalent in counterfeit versions in
Yes, sure.
Nigeria.
Yeah.
But here's the funny thing between BlackBerry and iPhone in Nigeria. iPhone is seen as a toy. So the person who has the counterfeit iPhone is seen as someone who just wants to flash how much money they've made. The person who has a BlackBerry sees it as a tool. Or
Yeah,
at least
yeah.
the person who wants a BlackBerry, they see it as a tool that will get them success in business. This is the
Very
strange
interesting.
kind of the psychodynamics at play in a market like Nigeria. And if BlackBerry can continue to leverage that and bring their new phones to market soon enough, but also roll out their data plans aggressively, then they're going to continue cornering that market for the near future, and that could be the key to rapid growth in the medium term, and that in turn is potentially what can save RIM as a company. The North American market isn't going
Well,
to save
if you
RIM.
have every single emerging market, then sure. But in South Africa, they've already slipped. And the moment you see unlimited iPhone and Android plans, which are around the corner, I believe,
very close.
then what do you do? And so hopefully by that stage, and I say hopefully because once again I really want them to do well, and there's definitely enough space in the market for them
Oh,
to be a
yes,
player. But hopefully they get BlackBerry 10 OS here and rolling. And it's a good enough product that they convince people before the next big sort of move to unlimited data comes.
Sure, the one thing that will destroy BlackBerry is if they continue to keep the market waiting so long for the new versions and the new products. The best thing they can possibly do is to stun the market by launching in June instead of September, even July. That will amaze and astonish and delight the market, and you'll see the share price tick up. But the market's expecting it in September. If it's any later than September, that's the end for BlackBerry. If it's in
Now-
September, it's 50-50.
Now the other question, Arthur, is Android's got a very strong content play with Google Play. And Apple obviously invented that game with iTunes. BlackBerry was hinting at something. Did I interview Jim Balsillie? I guess it was No, it was the year before. Shush. Anyway, I interviewed Jim Balsillie when BlackBerry was still doing pretty well. And he hinted at content agreements that were happening and that something was coming down the road. And then last year at BlackBerry World, I managed to pick up a few scratch cards for BlackBerry content vouchers, which looked like they were a proof of concept. And I've still got a few of them that I brought back with me. But that's really, to me, the big gaping hole in their strategy is they don't have an answer to Google Play. They've got BlackBerry World, but the app quality, quantity, and the missing other sort of content categories is potentially a massive problem to them. Do you think they need to plug that hole? Are they plugging that hole?
They are. They're working very hard at plugging it, and in fact, they make as big a play to developers right now as they are to the consumer and to the media. In fact, the developer is their key target market. Everything at BlackBerry World revolved around the developers. The developers were the VIPs.
Right,
and
but it goes beyond software, though.
You
It
can
goes
start
beyond
seeing
apps.
it in the apps environment. You can start seeing it in App World. They now have close to 100,000 apps, which also came as a surprise. That was the fifth big announcement. The fourth big one was what was happening in Nigeria. The fifth big one to me was when they announced there's something like 95,000 apps already.
It's respectable.
Once you get to that amount, it becomes irrelevant whether you've got 100,000 or 400,000. The key, of course, is to having all the apps that people really want, and all the apps have to be quality apps that perform to the level that you're used to on an iPad in particular. And they're not there yet. And that's what BlackBerry 10 will most likely bring to market. So
Well,
it doesn't
they-
actually matter if they have 100,000 apps. It's not the number of apps that counts anymore. It's how those apps perform.
How
But now-
important, how
sorry,
important are
Nick.
apps in the developing markets, sir? Because, and you might remember the stat a little while ago, a very large percentage of iPhones sold in South Africa, for example, never had an app installed on them. How important are those apps actually in the developing markets? I mean, I look at my wife and all her friends. They all love their BlackBerries. They are very, very loyal to BlackBerry, but not one of them has installed an app outside of maybe Twitter or Facebook on their BlackBerries.
And Angry Birds.
Well, no, not even Angry Birds. Not even Angry Birds.
I'm sure they're doing it on the quiet.
Yeah.
But it's a very good question, and the apps are important as a marketing tool more than for how you can actually use them. But more and more you'll find people developing local apps that will catch fire, so to
I
speak.
don't know if
Everyone
I
will
can
want
agree,
those apps.
Arthur. I mean, the
And-
reason that my iPhone is such a powerful business tool for me is because of the third-party applications that I'm using on it. I
But
mean,
you-
things
but
like
you're not-
Evernote.
He's
and
not
things
talking
like
about you.
Dropbox
But you're not
You're not the
Joe
mass market,
Blogs.
eh?
You're not the mass
Nicholas
market.
The
is
mass
talking
market
about
will
the
follow,
developing market.
and that's why Nokia is so much smarter, and that's why the Azure platform that they've developed that runs applications is the answer. I think it's. I don't think we can say that the mass market doesn't want apps. They've never been served apps, so we don't know. But I think that if you're not thinking apps in their context, and I think this is one thing Nokia is definitely doing. Look at the success of the Ramadan application in the Middle East on the Ovi store, for example. I think apps has to be part of it.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. Those locally relevant apps, or in that case culturally relevant, but it is locally relevant as well. When those catch fire, then the market's going to demand them.
Right. Okay.
And
Now I see what you're saying then. Yeah.
And so I have to agree with both of you, because apps are important. People are going to demand apps, but for a large part of the market, initially, the amount of apps or the specific ability to download apps is not going to drive it. It's that image of having the iPhone.
There's a massive opportunity in music, though, because
Huge,
everybody's moving away from the iTunes store model and the Ovi store model and the Nokia music model to streaming models like Spotify and Mog and Audio. And I think the big opportunity is for BlackBerry to come out with something that isn't a music store but is more akin to Spotify and provide it free over BIS. If they did that, now we're talking something that'll kill the American market, not just the emerging
I
market.
think,
And
you
they
know,
control the infrastructure as well, so they can compress to
Yeah,
whatever
exactly.
level
I mean,
they want.
It's
and
perfect
deliver
for
it.
music.
Yeah,
Streaming
I think
audio over BIS is great.
absolutely.
I think content in the form of music and video is going to be very, very important. And I think what BlackBerry's got to do in this space, and it's something that a lot of companies really struggle with traditionally, is they tend to launch in the more mature markets and not launch in emerging markets. And what they really should be doing is looking at the fact that their most captive market and their biggest opportunity now is the emerging market. So I think a content play is absolutely intrinsic, because I've heard this from numerous sources now. These music and video services are coming to South Africa, and sooner than what anybody thinks. They will
Now,
be a very,
let's
very
mention
soon.
that Mr. Andy Hadfield from Real Time Wines, who you might have heard on the ZA Tech Show before, and Mr. Brett Haggard, who is
We
here
have a
this
bet.
evening, have a bet on. Brett says iTunes Store in rands with movies and music and games by the end of
By
the year,
year end.
by end of 2012. Andy Hadfield says not happening.
Based
and
on
we're
what?
all he's not
Based
allowed
on
to
the
say.
fact that I've heard it from numerous sources.
Okay.
Now Brett's told me, and I won't sort of.
Are you
know.
expecting Apple to have a sudden attack of sanity?
No, okay, so I mean,
Brett's
Apple's
I was
not to
skeptical.
blame.
I'm actually taking Brett's side in this bet after he told me how he knows this stuff.
so
But it's a
at the end of the
secret,
day,
and I'll
so I have
respect
it-
that.
It's not Apple's fault. It's the content providers. It's the guys.
No,
who,
no,
the
actually,
old guys in
Nick-
grey suits who write the licenses.
quite the contrary. Quite the contrary. Because Nokia right now has a music store that is in South Africa. It has been pulled from other regions in the world. It is still running in South Africa. All right. It's really just a case of he who bothers to actually sit down with the record labels and make a decent deal with them will gain access to the content.
Well, I think you're both right.
I think music is a different animal to video, to series and movies and stuff.
Yeah, but people are missing out on an opportunity right now. You know what? I said this a year ago on this podcast, and it is even more so the case today, right? It's not just the techies that are getting their content online. People in advertising, people in HR, accountants, all right? Everyday people that use their computer for Excel and Outlook, all right, are watching episodes of series way before they get here. They are cancelling their DSTV subscriptions. Everybody I speak to says the only reason they have their multi-choice subscription at the moment is for sport, all right? Because the internet is there, huge variety. You don't have to wait. There aren't adverts. It's free. It's simple. I get to watch exactly what I want. It fits in with my schedule. And that is a reality at the moment. Everyday people are doing that. The people that own the licenses to that content are missing out on a revenue opportunity by not going there. You guys probably know this. It's a big reality for you right now.
So you're both kind of right, and I'll tell you why, right? and we've seen this in music. It's the classic case of you've got a very strong revenue model, and you've got a new model that you know is happening. But if you switch over from the one to the other overnight, you lose a lot of income in between.
Sure.
And so what's happening in all of these content categories, and it started with music, is that the guys who are in charge of publishing make sure that they stagger the movement from the old regime to the new regime in such a way that their profits are maximized and guaranteed for as long as possible. And what it's about at the end of the day is fiduciary responsibility to shareholders. So when Sony and Universal and EMI and BMG and all of them saw the writing on the wall, their shareholders said, what the hell are you going to do? And they said, don't worry, we've got a plan to keep you making money while we transition to this new system. Now, it didn't go as smoothly as they thought it would, and they had to lay off thousands of people, and they were very stupid about the way they did it, but that was their plan, right?
And I would
the
even
movie
say that the
industry's
way
doing
they
the
did
same
it
thing.
and how slow they did it, all right, caused an entirely new model to spring up in between, all right? The reason we have stream-only music services at the moment, the reason we have artists that are self-publishing, that are making money out of selling T-shirts and coffee mugs and stickers online, right, and don't have a record label and don't have management, is because right, those record labels took so long and tried to maximize shareholder value.
Right.
Guess what? In 10 years' time, they're going to be crying into a bucket, but it'll be a borrowed bucket. It'll be someone else's bucket because they won't own a
since
bucket.
2006. But hold on, let me finish my point, okay? So
Sorry.
now what's happening is the TV industry's been a little bit smarter, and they've narrowed the airtime windows. So, for example, on DSTV, you can watch Game of Thrones so quickly after it's aired in the States that it almost doesn't make sense for you to download
It actually is concurrent.
Now, what's backfiring in that case
1
is
week
that
out.
season 2 of Game of Thrones is a chunk of poo, and it's terrible. But
Yes.
that besides the point, okay?
Stay the course, Simon.
They've-
It does improve.
But the reason you're both right, I'm up to date actually, so I don't know
I've
if
read
you
the
can see
books.
to
No,
the
I've read the
future.
books. It does get better.
no, but it's like the
In
first
the
season.
book,
The
it
first
says
4
the
episodes.
season's going to stop being.
The first 4 episodes of the season were SETI uppy, and then it went
Okay,
into
hold on.
action. It's exactly
Let's-
the same
We're
with
going to go
season
down
2.
that rat hole in a moment, but let me finish my points. The reason you're both right is because Nick's right. the legislators, and they were being led by the industry and lobbied by the industry, have set up this ridiculous situation where you need to go and speak to the same record label in each country to sell music in that country.
Yes.
Brett's right, because you can do it if you bother to go and speak to them all.
Yes. And Nokia
But it's
actually
and Nokia
did that. No, but can I say something else for a second, all right? Launch a service that appeals to me and gets me paying for my music and my video again, all right? I'm a very economically active person. I, on average, have a lot more disposable income than the average man in the street, as do you, Simon, as do you, Nick, as do you, Arthur.
Ish, I don't
all
know.
right?
Eh?
Hey, I don't know, dude. Like, you know what? At least... No, but it's true. No,
You're
it's
right.
a fact.
No, you're right. You're right.
I can
You're
afford to buy more than one CD a month.
As
all
my
right?
friend Ryan would have said, does it look like I'm made of money?
Well, actually.
I fell out of the money tree and hit every branch. on
Yeah,
the
just
way
fake
down.
Rolex and it go, does it look like I'm made of money?
But in all honesty, there's a really, really big market to be had there. They should really capitalize on. And you know, back to the original point is, BlackBerry could do this the way they companies normally do this. So what will happen is they'll come up with a fantastically innovative service that will have the right content players backing it and the right amount of content. And guess what? They'll launch it in Europe and in North America, where guess what? Their market share is in the toilet and it's fast going to hell, all right? Whereas what they should be doing is they should be going after the markets where they're gaining traction, all right, and getting in there, because the reality is the wheel has turned in those markets, and the people like the Androids and the iPhones and the Windows of the world, these kinds of services are about to launch in those regions. You've got to get there first, because if you don't, that corner of the market is closed off, all right? All of the evidence right now points to the fact that by year end we will have the Zune marketplace in some way, mean or form in South Africa. You do the maths on this. Microsoft Windows 8, intrinsic part of that is this gigantic software store. If you're going to go to all of the trouble of putting all of this tin down to serve that, and all of the legislative stuff and the software, the service level agreements and the support stuff, and get the staff in and put a call center down and do all of the education, why don't you just bolt the music and the video component on? It just makes sense, right? And that's a little bit of legal wrangling, and ta-da, suddenly you're offering those services in that region.
So what I said in a column last year was, if you look at the country Spotify launched in, which is Sweden, right?
Yeah.
They've got a population of 9 million. In 2008, a big study jointly between South Africa, Stats SA, and one of the big American universities determined that 26% of South Africa could be deemed middle class, okay, which is a very low percentage by world standards. But still, that means that there's about 20 million middle class South Africans. Let's say that in that pool, only about 5 million of them would be able to afford and could bear a service like Spotify. That means that a market half the size of the total population of Sweden, where Spotify launched, can afford the service. You have to be a moron to overlook South Africa.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Totally.
Are we not overlooking a one fundamental challenge here? And I'm not sure if it really applies to music, but definitely to video content and to games and stuff, is the Film and Publications Board.
Oh, yes.
And the arduous process it is, and the expensive process it is, to actually get stuff approved by the FPB before you
just
can
do
legally
what
sell
Google
it.
and Sony and Google have literally gone, we can't deal with these people, so let's just do it, and we'll say sorry.
And this is the reason I might
And
actually
the FPB is too stupid, because they still haven't realized the internet has happened. They don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And they can't make sense
I mean,
of
it's
it.
a ridiculous
And,
amount
this
of
is the
money they
only-
charge to actually watch your content and put a little triangular sticker on it.
Never
as
mind
well.
that,
Yeah.
Nick. It's the different kinds of content they're in charge of, and this is the one place where my bet with Andy could actually fall down, because I'm pretty confident that the music and the video will be here. I think that's a far easier thing. You know, the video maybe, but one of the primary reasons, right, there aren't any games right now in the iTunes store, but they are in the Kenyan store. And one of the primary reasons that right now on the Windows marketplace, a lot of those games aren't there, is because the gaming content is also governed by the Film and Publications Board, all right? And it needs a little triangular sticker on it where, like, it has been passed by us, okay? And it's a very expensive process to do that, and the catalog of content is so absolutely massive. So not only is it pricey, right, they don't have the heads to actually look through the content. content.
I don't
So
think
let's
they've
do this
updated their
example
website
again,
since
right?
Like 2007.
Apple comes to South Africa, says we want to do things above board. Unlike Google and Sony, we'd actually like to play along with the legislators and the regulators, and they go to the FPB. The FPB says it costs, I'm not sure what it costs, but let's
10,000
say
rand.
10,000 Rand per game you want to sell in South Africa. Apple goes, our games cost 99 cents, and sometimes we only sell 2 copies of one.
Yes.
Plus, we have 100,000 games.
Yeah.
The FPB goes, it doesn't matter, you have to pay, right? Now, here's the amazing thing to me.
The onus falls to the
If
developer,
you're-
strangely enough.
yeah.
But anyway, yeah.
And the same for publication. So if you're a magazine, you have to go via the FPB, but only if you're a pornographic magazine. And the person who decides whether or not you're a pornographic magazine or not is you. Okay? So in South Africa, Playboy said,
awesome.
well, I guess we're a pornographic magazine. So they pay their licensing fee to the FPB, and they send them a free
Send
copy
a
for those
subscription to a man in a
for those
safari
old
suit with a comedy
Afrikaans-
sock. Yes.
those old Afrikaans wormies to get their rocks off. Okay.
Yeah. Why are they not approving games,
No,
bastards?
so
They're busy
hold on. It
reading
gets
Playboy.
better.
Loving themselves.
Heat magazine is not classified as pornographic, but ran the cover shoot from the first Playboy in South Africa. Okay, that did not go via the FPB. Same content, but Heat has decided it's not pornographic. In the back of the Heat magazine, you can play Sudoku, which you can do on your iPhone too. But the FPB doesn't care that you can. Like,
You can
do we
also
not
play
see how
Sudoku in the back of the
stupid-
Playboy. They just don't call it Sudoku. But anyway,
It's a Duke ear.
which brings us to the Association of School Governors call this week to ban cell phones in schools,
Nice.
and it's part of the same story.
because
suppose.
that's totally going to
Reason
solve
is-
the problem, right? It's
Yeah,
totally going to
exactly.
fix
So
it.
we
Yeah.
can't- and they say because it's become unmanageable. So because they can't manage it, instead of looking for a way to manage it, not just to manage it, but leverage it and actually rope in cell phones to solve or help solve the educational crisis in this country, let's ban it. That's
I
how
think
we manage
it's a
things.
fantastic idea because
That's-
historically, every single attempt to ban everything has worked out so ridiculously well
Well,
every time, right?
Exactly.
Do me a
So the
favour.
point
Come on,
is
people.
that they are stuck in the 19th century in the same way that the FPB is stuck in the 19th century. iTunes is stuck in the 19th century.
calling
in
tonight's
terms
show
of the
Rant.
thinking behind it. We are stuck in the 19th century in
We
terms of the
are.
regulatory
Well,
environment.
we have internet
But we know
connectivity
this.
that kind of rivals the 1970s. So hell
And
yes.
I've just moved to Cape Town where you can't buy wine on a Sunday.
Well, no, you
Oh,
can't do that in
jeez,
Joburg
man.
either. No, you
No,
can't.
you
buy
can
that
in
in Joburg.
Joburg.
They're
They changed it in
They're
Joburg.
not gonna no,
They're
you
talking about
can
shutting
legally
it
do it.
down.
The liquor store owners are just such lazy asses. They don't bother to open on a Sunday.
No, but also, isn't there a moratorium on like liquor licenses
Oh
being
God, let's
issued at
rant.
the moment? or
Okay,
something?
we
Yeah,
need to
anyway.
we need to move away from
Anyway.
legislation and
Yeah.
regulation because we'll be ranting. Till
Talking
the cows
about
come
cell
home.
phones, let's talk Samsung Galaxy S3.
Sure, let's do that, Nick. What a
it's-
great suggestion.
It's well, I mean, it came out.
It's there. It has a 4.8-inch screen. It's quad-core processor.
Check, this is
It's
how you hijack
slimmer.
a conversation. Samsung has way better intel than we do, and they chose to announce the S3 now, which means they must know that Apple is doing the iPhone 5 next month. Let's talk about the iPhone 5.
Oh, jeez. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Oh no!
chat room.
Apparently,
I'm sorry.
apparently
I'm
it's
joking,
as
I'm
thin as a
joking.
credit card, according to our chat room, because
And it's made of
somebody's
glass.
somebody's neighbor told them it's as thin as a credit card, right?
So here's my prediction. The iPhone 5 is a piece of glass that tells you what to do all day. Like, you don't even ask Siri anymore. She just goes, it's time to brush your teeth, you lazy sod. Get out of bed.
Dude, yeah, you guys seriously need to
Buy the
read-
brown one.
You
Yeah,
seriously
make a
need to read
bowel
Demon
movement.
by Daniel Suarez, because that is it. It's like you put the glasses on. The glasses tells you what to do. It's like Google in your head, man.
Okay, let's talk about the Galaxy S3. The Galaxy S2 is the most successful Android device in history. All 3 years of it. But it's been ridiculously popular. It still is. A lot of people still go into stores and ask for the S2. It's still selling very well. The S3, in a lot of ways, is very similar to the HTC One X to me.
Yeah, and also very, very similar to the Galaxy Nexus. In fact, it's got a little bit of a bigger screen. It's a little thinner. It has a camera that is 0.1 of a megapixel lower in resolution, and it's running TouchWiz. Oh, and the quad core. That's it.
Right.
They
That's
said
the difference.
they said it's got a
it's
better
just a perfect
battery.
phone, so what's the big deal?
Well,
No,
it's
look,
not a
it is-
perfect
it
phone,
is.
quite
No, no,
honestly. I mean, I've
I
had a
think
Galaxy
it's
S2 and I hate it every minute.
No, we're talking about
Really?
the S3 now.
No, but I'm talking about so the S3 for me is probably going to be 3 times the fail.
Nick, I'm
Oi.
really interested to see how much of that was operating system and how much of it was hardware.
It was it was mostly hardware, and I tell you what, the
Okay.
number one kicker for me was battery life.
Okay, 2100 milliamp hour battery on the S3.
How much is the current one? Because they
It
boasted
is 300 milliamp hours higher than any of their previous
when they
phones.
launched the S2, one of the big USPs that they put up on their websites and in all their marketing material
1800
is
milliamp hour
better
battery. Yeah.
And I had this thing, I couldn't get a full workday out of it, even with moderate use. It was terrible. And I tried to get hold of Samsung locally, and their answer to me was, buy the extended battery.
Well, at least they have a phone that takes an extended battery, unlike so many other people out
But the
there.
problem is
Don't advertise something with
Yeah,
an
no, you're
awesome
right.
battery
You're dead
if
right.
the battery sucks.
the problem is Android, right? And it's a problem iOS has as well, where you get these runaway processors that just drain your battery. I mean, I have days with the iPhone where I'm lucky if I make it to 11 a.m.
Yeah, no, totally.
And then it's kaput.
Something keeps on using the GPS.
3GS?
And bam.
And this thing can go a day and a half without a charge.
Really?
Yes, but it
Yes.
takes about 36 seconds to switch between tasks.
It doesn't matter, Brett. I'm trying to make a point here.
Every 5 minutes, you can type one character on the keyboard. No, it's like iOS has gotten way too bloaty for it. I've got one in my car as a spare phone, and I found it's the biggest difference in terms of speed between the 4S and the 3GS.
Look, I've never had a 4S. I've never even had a 4. So this to me has been, probably the best phone I've ever used.
So who's excited about the S3?
I am.
I'm really
And why?
There are quite a few reasons why. And one of them is that they've looked at all the elements that made other phones better than the S2. And there aren't many phones that are in themselves better, but if you take elements from different phones, each phone has got something that's better. One of my favorite phones, for example, is the Motorola Razr, because it's just
I
so
love that
thin.
phone.
Actually,
I love
right
that
now
phone.
my favorite Android device. Yeah.
It slides into a jeans pocket or pants pocket with barely a bulge. It's not there.
Is that a razor in your pocket?
So
Exactly. And amongst other things, it's also got a beautiful screen, and
it's tough.
It's
I mean, it's
comfortable.
built-
It's tough. It
it's
doesn't look tough, but it is.
It's coated in
It's
Kevlar.
responsive, it's quick, it's
So-
good battery life. It's
but
it's
yeah.
all around
makes
very
that-
good Android device.
What makes it phone is how thin it is, and that's something that the Galaxy
S3
S3
does,
didn't
yes.
have.
So-
the S3 now competes.
But look, the
on
S2
that-
wasn't
on that
that
score,
bad. I mean,
for
the S2
example.
was it was thinner than
But the S3 is better, you see.
Yeah.
My point is, you then take another phone that's got longer battery life. The S3 brings that to the party, better battery life compared to. I'm not
So-
sure which Android phone has decent battery life. There are very few that
They're
do.
very few, and they're usually
But-
the smaller screen guys without GPS. But
There was an article a little while ago I read on the net about, and I think it was HTC saying that they were sacrificing battery life for form factor.
yes,
I mean,
so,
that's also a problem. I mean, if that's the way the industry is going.
Totally.
So the thing is that Samsung's reacting, right? They're reacting to the market. As you said, they're taking the things that made other phones better than the S2 and they're reacting to that. The only two... Are you playing Angry Birds while I...
Yes.
Start to demo
All
Angry
right.
Birds for you
I can't wait.
on a new tablet.
So anyway,
No.
the only two companies that I see truly innovating, and I'm not saying Samsung isn't an innovative company, because in other departments like television, they're incredibly innovative.
No, they can't be touched.
But in mobile phones, Apple's innovating, and I see BlackBerry innovating, although they're yet to convince us that their innovations are going anywhere. But Apple's innovating, and you have to think that the single biggest problem and the single biggest focus area for the iPhone department at Apple at the moment has to be battery. And we're starting to see it creep into their patents. So on the 28th of December last year, while nobody was paying attention, Apple lodged a patent for hydrogen fuel cells. Now, we've had this technology working since 2005, thereabouts. The problem is that when a hydrogen fuel cell leaks or develops a problem, it blows up the building. It doesn't just burn your pants, okay?
On the upside, there's nobody to actually file the lawsuit because you're not there. So
But the idea is, if you manage to make If you manage to make safe hydrogen fuel cells, you could power something like an iPhone for like 2 months, okay? And then the idea is you'd visit the Apple store every 2 months, they'd clip out your old hydrogen fuel cell, slap in a new one, and off you go.
It's like the new printer cartridges, or gigantic hydrogen fuel cells somewhere else, and a Tesla coil. And
now, it might be
And a large hadron collider.
it might be 5 years before we see this, but you can bet that the next big iPhone announcement is going to have something to say, and it's going to be something pretty definitive about batteries.
look, it would be unbelievably welcome, because I'd say that that's not just a problem on mobile phones. It is a problem on notebooks. It is a problem on tablets. It is every single portable device, something that is not attached to something else with a wire,
Except the
right,
Kindle.
has crap battery
Well,
life.
except
Oh yeah,
the
but I mean the
Kindle.
Kindle really does.
But it's not on.
But it does nothing. When it's on, it's actually not on, which is the pretty remarkable thing about it, right?
Yeah, solid state is great when
That's
yeah,
what we need.
batteries last very long when the device is actually off.
Battery in my Abacus also lost very
One
long.
thing that batteries have gotten good at is retaining power when the device is off.
Yeah.
Now, what is that new tablet that you brought along, Arthur?
That's a brand that you may
Into
have
the
heard of.
microphone.
Anyone
There we go.
anyone want to guess what brand tablet that is?
Without looking at the
Who
box.
flung down?
Without looking at the box.
HTC.
Huawei.
You got it in one.
Huawei.
The new media pad from Huawei.
I had one of
And
the
the most interesting thing about it is that on the back, it's got a little logo that says
Google.
So I just switched it off. It says with Google. And what they've learned there is the success of the Idios in African countries
Yes.
where they've marketed it as the Google phone.
Mm.
So this is the Google tablet in a way, although
That's interesting.
they probably can't say that. But
No, the
with
interesting
logo on
thing
the
is
back,
with the with Google thing, all right. So that's just not like a little bit of extra printing and stuff like that. There's a whole bunch of additional certification and quality checks that have to go into this. It's pretty much the same as
Intel inside.
you know, the difference between the made for iPod and designed for iPod vibe. All right, that's a certification thing. Google rigorously tests this. This, for a lot of vendors out there, alarm bells should be going off like mad right
Exactly.
now,
Take
because
a
if they
lookie.
can
you hit it right
pass
on the head. And just show
that
the audience
certification,
the back
the rest
of
of them
that
are in
thing
trouble.
quickly, that very cool envelope type look and feel that they've got.
It feels
And
really,
it's-
really good in
It's a
hand.
Great,
eh?
great
Good.
build quality.
Yep, it's got a design ethic to it, which you didn't see before in the Slim
Yeah.
7, for example.
And I must say, I really didn't like their
And
previous
they
effort
still
in this space.
don't understand buttons.
And the Slim 7, I can now tell you, sold 27,000 units in South Africa,
That's not
Okay.
bad.
which is
All
damn
right.
good. And this is far better. It looks and feels better. It's better integrated. It's only launching in June, but you can
Give
expect
us an
it to
idea
make
of
an
specs, Arthur. So what kind of specs are we talking under the hood? Decentish processor?
impact. I can't tell you the specs offhand. I have to look at my list, my laundry list again.
Okay, all right.
But it's decent. It's not dazzling, but
Okay.
it's decent. it'll take
Screen
on
and
the Samsung-
digitizer, what have they gone for there? Like a pretty decent one?
It's reasonable. It's nothing dazzling, and it's probably not as good as the Galaxy Tabs
Yes,
7-inch, but price-wise, it's probably going to come in at a better price, and it's going to be marketed through the networks very aggressively.
You know, I think
the way the Slim 7 has been.
there's also a lot to be said for how technology is becoming more and more disposable. And I'm starting to see this with a lot of people is they
We've
aren't-
never had so much landfall. It's awesome.
No, I mean, from the perspective that technology moves at an unbelievably quick pace, so people are buying down a lot of the time, so that they can literally buy more often and they can refresh more often. I think the wear and tear on devices is also harder than what it's ever been,
Absolutely.
because people are using devices as like an everyday part of their life a lot more, and you know, I think that you know what differentiates a very entry level device and a very high end device. There's a gigantic price gap, often 50 to 60% price difference there, which isn't really, you know, it's maybe a 20% difference in terms of specs and functionality. So I see a lot of people actually buying down and buying simpler and buying cheaper devices and not going right to
So,
the top.
I want to move along just because we're almost out of time. We haven't even started our picks yet. But I think we need to just quickly mention the FNB GeoPay application. It was leaked today. I have known about it for a while because I'm emceeing the launch event this week. And I spoke to Michael Jordan today, and he said, look, you can't control when things hit the App Store with Apple. We wanted to coincide it with Wednesday's launch.
Yeah.
But it was so bloody good that they approved it earlier. So there we go. But the long and the short of it is that the FNB app, which has been available for a while now, that allows you to do banking on the go and make payments and stuff, you can now do geofence payments to other app users. And I think this is fairly killer.
That's quite interesting. I quite like that.
Now, I don't want to reveal all of... In fact, I'm not even going to say it. There's things that people haven't been able to guess from just the app itself and the little bit of leaked information yet that FNB hasn't said yet, and you're going to find out on Wednesday. But it does something with payments that is a game changer for FNB, and you'll find out what that is later. Cool. So yes, you can pay other people, but there's a little cherry on top of that for FNB, which I'll tell you guys about offline.
You know this feature.
Well, that's 8:30.
It has now been officially
8:30 on
announced
Wednesday.
because of the leak today, and because someone accidentally released the app onto various platforms, and yep, in fact, it's been officially announced, so we can say more about it. It's essentially a P2P payment mechanism on the FNB banking app, but what's really killer about it is you don't actually have to be an FNB
Speaking
customer
to the mic.
You don't have to be an FNB customer to use it. I'll read to you what the statement released this evening says.
Oh, so they have put out one.
They've just put it out. GeoPayments is available to both FNB and non-FNB customers. FNB customers will have the benefit of being able to pay as well as receive payments. Non-FNB customers will be able to download the app and receive GeoPayments into an e-wallet which can be created via the app.
Now that is crazy because you're essentially setting up an FNB account just by having the app on your phone. And somebody can pay you. You can go to the nearest FNB ATM and without a card, using e-wallet, you can withdraw the money.
How do they get around FICA?
Good question. I don't know.
Okay, probably the way they get around FICA is the fact that somebody with a smartphone owns a phone which has been FICA.
You know what? It's not a current account.
No, sorry, that's RICA.
I'm talking about FICA.
No, it's not a current account. It's not a current account. It's essentially a wallet.
But FICA applies to, like savings accounts.
Mm-mm.
Yes.
No.
When I use
to a transactional saving account, yes, not to a wallet system, not to store value, because otherwise you'd have to FICA every time you bought a prepaid voucher.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Good point.
So, well,
Good point.
maybe there is a loophole there that shouldn't be being exploited.
There are
probably a really good question to ask on
in
Wednesday.
In fact, there are loopholes, and I think it's when I worked on Wizit. A little while ago at my previous company, and they managed to use an exception in FICA, which says that if you transact below a certain amount per day and you maintain a balance of below a certain amount per day or per month, you don't have to be FICA'd. You just need to go through the normal KYC, which is get a photo or photocopy of your ID. You didn't have to go through the process of proving residential address.
I'm essentially giving you cash because all you can do with that e-wallet account is withdraw the cash from an FNB ATM. So I'm just giving you cash, really.
How long can you have it sit in that account, though?
It can stay for a while, and you can also withdraw it in chunks. You don't have to.
E-wallet.
On e-wallet, you don't have to withdraw the full amount. You get one free withdrawal when you receive money.
That's right.
And then you can, but you can withdraw a little bit of the money and leave the rest. And
interestingly, you can only withdraw certain denominations as well. I pay my gardener with an e-wallet.
Like increments of 50, for example.
I think it's increments of 15. Of 20, actually, or 25. It's a weird increment, but I remember him asking me to pay him a little bit extra just so that he could get all the money out of his e-wallet.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah, it's very strange, but very handy. And now with the GeoPayment feature, there is every possibility that somebody like me can cut cash out of my ecosystem entirely.
Now, there's also a whole other discussion to be had about geofencing versus NFC, but I think we'll leave the FNB discussion at that.
NFCs for speakers and car kits.
FNB will
seriously.
FNB will officially launch this on Wednesday, and then we'll have all the details.
So geofencing is just happening. NFC is already redundant as far as I'm concerned for payment. I've got the Pay with Square app. as I care a little bit about what's happening in the virtual money space due to my business interests. But I've been using trying to use Pay with Square. There's no South African vendors, obviously, that allow it. But it's not quite geofencing, but it's moving in that direction. And then also Starbucks, you can pay with the Starbucks app now at Starbucks stores. Canada's running some pretty big trials around geofencing. And then there's something happening interesting with Mixit and one of their acquisitions where they're working on geofencing using Wi-Fi SSIDs in South Africa, allowing you to make payments on a place so long as you and the vendor are both on the same Wi-Fi network.
That's actually very cool. That's that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah,
and it would force more restaurateurs and stuff like that to have hotspots up, which I think will be also
what
kind
the
of
next
a win,
step
right?
here is, and it's something that's happening in Africa is airtime.
Yeah,
swapping airtime using these sort of near field and
I think that's going to be a big application of it.
Yeah.
The FNB app allows you to make transactions if you're within 500 meters of the recipient.
Gee, that's very cool.
So you can imagine, especially in a family type environment, people sending airtime to each other in the household.
I'd love to see how they structure the fees around this, because if you look at the fees around e-wallet, for example, me as somebody sending money to an e-wallet, it's not cheap, eh?
No.
It's R8 every time I send $200 to my gardener. So fees are going to be a big thing.
Definitely, that's going to be the make or break of any of these services.
Yeah. All right, let's quickly do our picks of the week, and then we'll stick a fork in it. Arthur, do you have something to pick this week? Are you going to do your Huawei tablets or?
The Huawei, I'll make a pick of the week once I played with it some more, and once it's ready to launch. It's still about a month from launch in South Africa.
Okay.
My first pick of the week is a box.
Boxes are very useful.
The box containing the Sony Xperia S phone. What strikes you about this box?
It's very flat.
No.
No,
what strikes me about it is
it doesn't say Ericsson.
It looks like, aside from not saying you're very clever, but that obviously is one of the keys.
Because he might have
range.
missed the fact that they acquired Ericsson and killed the name, shot them in the head like 4 months ago.
But it looks like nothing less than an Apple.
Yeah, I was going to say there's no like stuff that
Can I
kind of
take a
says
look at
now
that?
with extra this or like get a free whatever, or it's not loaded with
When you
stickers,
open
with
it-
logos. It's not telling you anything about the specs. It's going
Absolutely.
in this box
Is
is
a
a
cool-
Sony Xperia S.
Yes.
That's it.
And
Awesome, will
that's the
jump
Apple
out.
approach. And when you unpack it as well, it's very design oriented. I'm quite into this whole design ethos thing tonight. But this box tells you that Sony wants to compete
Where's the
in
phone,
the area
Arthur?
of design. And here's the phone.
Jeez, you know.
And may I draw
It's
your
like watching a
attention
magic show.
to this little glass strip along the bottom.
Does
I
the
also draw
lighty
your
stuff,
attention
that's
to
right, yeah.
the shape of the phone, slightly curved back. A lot of people said,
and
"What's
to the
curved back
fact that
for?"
he's received it for review and none of us have.
You haven't?
No, I have not.
Why?
Because let's not talk about.
No,
the
we
PR
won't
agency.
go into where you know, that's
Simon
one of my-
said it,
that's
I
one of my
Like, I'm
bugbears.
sorry, it's
Simon says.
I have to confess I was shocked to receive this, but the truth is I did.
I have to
I'm not
confess I'm
shocked
not
at all.
shocked that I didn't receive one. Anyway, let's
It's
carry
going
on.
back soon, so you'll be getting one very soon, Brett. But
What?
what's
Why is this funny?
Yeah.
No, seriously.
Build a
I
bridge,
love the
people.
strip of glass
Build
at the
a bridge.
bottom.
Get
That's
over
No, it's because
Yeah.
they only,
All the way
because they only had
down.
one, really.
that strip of glass tells you that the design was a critical part of the strategy. It had to look good because
quite
the
amazing.
iPhone's great appeal is how good it looked initially. Now it's looking old, I have to say.
I'm looking
And
forward
that's
to where
looking very new
Sony
and very
goes
dazzling.
now that they've lost Ericsson.
Let's
It's
hope
almost
they
like
can
this
start.
is the statement they're
Well,
making.
let's hope they can actually start integrating a lot of the stuff from the rest of their portfolio into the phone stuff and start pushing that stuff across. I was chatting to somebody recently about this, and that's what I hope, that there's going to be a lot more integration. The reality is, even though it's now part of Sony, it's still a very separate division with
Yeah.
a very separate little
That's what everyone's
political
saying.
regime and everything else. It's really just they've taken the Ericsson name out and they've bought the shares of it. That's it. That's the only stuff that's changed.
But that's
really.
pretty
But now
significant.
you can see a shift
It's a massive
into
change.
that design appeal that Sony products tend to have and that never extended to the phones.
So Sony
for
Xperia
the
next.
first time. So that's the first pick of the week, the box of the Sony
Hopefully
Xperia.
I receive it next.
Yes,
Anyway.
that Brett will be getting next. Then my second one is, in fact, a book. It's the Primary School Education App Guide.
I got that one. I
Yes,
got
that
because
I
it
got,
came from
yeah.
competent
I'm so relieved you all
communications
got
people.
it. Yeah. Now I have to say the people doing marketing and PR for the core group in this country are doing a magnificent job, seeing they got the book to all three of us,
Yes,
but not to Nicholas.
Along with the new iPad.
So, well, I'm not important to them. So
So anyway,
looks like an old
what's
iPad.
exciting about the Education
know,
App
right?
Guide is that it's actually given a guide to all the educational apps available that are appropriate to South African market for primary schools, and it's divided them into grades 1, 2 and 3 and 4, 5 and 6, and within the individual apps it tells you which grades it's appropriate for. Most of them are appropriate across that full band of grades.
It
1 to 3
really
and 4
is
to 6.
brilliant.
And the book costs something like 69 Rand, I think. And I think it's an invaluable resource to any school that's introducing any kind of tablet.
Or any
Well,
parent.
I was
Any
about to
parent.
say,
I
I
mean-
find it particularly useful for my kids now because, I mean, the thing is, you really don't know what apps to download. Little, not so much what's appropriate, but you really want a catalog of what's out there.
It's a great initiative,
Right,
but
I
they do
think
need
it's
to make
cool.
a digital version of it just because the app landscape
there's no
changes so
question.
often.
Are
No
all of
question
these
about
games
that.
and
They
apps
need
available
this-
in the South African store?
It
Good
actually
question.
It gives
I'm not sure.
a dollar price for most of them,
Yeah.
and many of them are free though. So probably well
Yeah, but
over half of them are
But
free.
Nick's point
No,
is that
but
if they're games, they're not in the South
They're
African
not in the
store.
South African store.
The question is, are they classified as games or as educational apps?
Well,
And most of them
let's
are
search for one of
educational
them
apps.
quickly and see. I mean-
Okay, so
Oh wait,
do-
I don't
do a
have
search
I
on
don't have a South African.
voc-
account.
Vocabulary Ace, for example.
Does anybody have a South African
we
store?
I can log into my South African account,
Yeah.
but
Are we all criminals,
let's
are we?
rather move on.
Yeah, let's move
Okay.
on. Let's
But
move
We'll
on.
put it on the
point is-
website. We'll let
The
you know.
point is, they mostly not games; they're educational apps. So it's unlikely they have that same restriction.
That's very cool.
Good
That's
question,
Very, very
though.
cool.
And kudos to, I think I should mention the person who looks after Think Ahead at the core group, and that's Michelle Lessus.
Doing a
amazing.
great
She's
job.
fantastic. Really good.
And
All
then
right.
my final pick of the week, I think I'll leave to Simon as his pick of the week, I suspect,
What's that?
which is a new version of some tablet that Apple.
Oh, the iPad 3. Have you been
I
playing
think
with
they're
it?
called Apple.
Isn't it called the iPad? No.
So it's
just
called
the
the
iPad.
new
The
iPad.
new
No,
iPad.
it's called the iPad. It's the new iPad.
It's the new iPad.
But it's that's not its name. Its
It's
name
called
is
the
iPad.
iPad, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's.
And I suspect the new iPhone will be called iPhone.
The iPhone.
Anyway, be that as it may. And are you are you enjoying it that much? Are you finding it that much better than the previous one, or?
No, I have to confess that unless I'm using something that uses HD, the difference isn't that dramatic.
I'm
And
gonna.
I'm
I'm
finding
going
it massive.
Just wait.
to completely disagree with you and say that I cannot move back to my iPad. Email, Twitter, web browsing, like how much crisper the fonts are. It's like mind blowing.
The fonts, especially when reading text, are almost too crisp now.
Oh, I love it. Oh, addicted. Winner.
How do you really feel that?
Sold. So pour me some more Kool-Aid.
Okay,
Simon.
the truth is, it's obviously a far better screen. It's a dazzling screen, and there's no question that it's a preferable option to the iPad 2. But is the
Not worth
R1,000
paying.
preferable?
Yeah,
That's
it's
the
not worth
question.
paying.
And for
Buying
a lot
one
of
from
people,
scratch.
I mean, if you were looking to upgrade from the first iPad, I mean, that would be the logical
Oh,
one
it's
to upgrade
no-brainer.
to.
Absolute
But I mean, if you
no-brainer.
have an iPad 2, it's very, very difficult to justify that, unless you're Brett and
I couldn't
you know.
justify it.
Is
And
that a
if-
2 or a 3?
That's a 2. That's a
Okay, hold on.
And if you press for budget, I would even say that it's not a bad saving, 1,000 Rand, to buy the iPad 2 instead of the iPad 3.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's already available from FNB, and you save, I think, 200 Rand if you buy it from them, the
Yeah.
entry level one.
You paid off over 48 months interest free as well. I mean, that's a win.
Now, let me tell you a little
24
something
months, yeah.
interesting about the iPad 3 and ATA, which I figured out this week.
Okay.
The ATA SIM cards,
Yes.
the ones that worked absolutely perfectly in the iPad 2, don't work in the
They
iPad
register to the iPad that you use them with, though. You can't move them into another
3.
iPad.
Is that so?
Yeah.
No, but beyond that, there's apparently an issue that the SIM cards are not compatible.
That's interesting. I wonder how that would
So
work.
what you do is
So
you
I'm
get
finding
the,
same
you get
frequency,
the ATA
same
card,
tray.
you put it into a MiFi device, and you
you-
connect to your hotspot.
Or you take
And
you
it's
take that
irrelevant.
3GS that you got lying in your car and you just set up a little personal hotspot, and there you go.
I haven't. Yeah, I must look into that. I know you can't move the ATA SIMs from one iPad to another because they're locked to the device that they're in. Anyway, let's move along with our picks of the week. Nick?
There's a little app which I've started using a lot. It's called DocuSign Inc. It's a free app available in the App Store. And basically what it allows you to do is to capture your signature in digital format, and also capture digital signatures.
Oh, this is cool because it ties into my pick of the week. Okay.
Which basically you can import into practically any document that you have lying around in Dropbox, on your email. You can take a photo with your iPad camera and slap your signature and your initials and your digital signature onto documents and mail them off. It's just a really convenient way of signing documents, especially if you
Okay.
get them on email. Instead of having to print them out, sign them, scan them in, mail them to yourself, and then mail them off to wherever they need to be. You just have them directly on your iPad, open them up in your email, slap your signature and your initials and your digital signature on them, and you just mail them back to wherever they need to be sent. So
I'll quickly slip in my pick then, because this might do it better than my pick. But I thought because I've been so hard on Adobe in recent episodes, I'm going to pick Adobe Reader, the new one, both for iPad and desktop, because Adobe's got the ability to sign documents now in Reader, right?
Yeah.
You scan your signature, you store it, and it's a free app, and you can sign documents, you can add text, so you can now for the first time fill out forms, well, not for the first time, but freely and easily, sign them, put your initials on each page, and email them off to somebody.
I'm so
The
relieved about
iPad
that.
app is awesome because you can open documents now from your email on your iPad with Adobe Reader, which is free. It lets you sign with your finger. The only thing is they've really messed up with the fact that you can't add text to documents with Adobe Reader for iPad. You can write text stuff in with your fingers. You can draw on documents, but you can't add type text.
can't type.
Which is weird, unless I'm overlooking something.
That's
But
the end of Apple.
yeah. But being
Adobe,
able
what
to
are you talking
sign,
about?
being able to sign without a fax machine and a printer is really cool.
yeah, and I mean you can set up different profiles for yourself. You can have multiple signatures. It really is like if you are you live in the Middle East and you have an Arabic signature, for example,
Yes.
and you have a Roman signature, or, you can choose this one I will sign in Arabic, this one I will sign in
Yeah, that's pretty
in
cool.
English or whatever. So,
Okay. Nice. Bretsky?
So my pick is a little kit that I got sent this week that you know how I like accessories and little bits and pieces. So there's a notebook kit from a company called Blue Lounge. So Blue Lounge make like red like a almost a lunchbox shaped thing that you can put your power supply in, so you don't have to see ugly
Cable
cables.
tidiers.
Yes,
And they make
all of
entire
these kinds of
desks
things.
as well.
So they have a laptop kit for like $200. It comes with two of these little things called cable
is
yo-yos.
that ZA Rons?
ZA Rant,
Okay.
yes. In most retail stores. These two little things called cable yo-yos, all right, that, cable tidies essentially. But what's kind of cool is they've got a little sticky pad on the back, so you can stick them down to a desk, or you can stick them onto the back of your notebook, which is kind of cool. So it comes with two of those. And then what I think is probably one of the coolest things ever, these things called Cool Feet. So what Cool Feet are these little rubber elevating jobbies that you can clip onto any notebook, all right?
Very cool.
And what it does is it pops them into, the notebook into a very ergonomic kind of
Typing position.
Yeah, indeed. But at the same time, you can like pull them off, put them in a little carry bag. Now, what's kind of rad is if you don't have any rubber feet in the bottom of your notebook, it comes with little pads. So you kind of peel them and stick them on the bottom, making for like optimal sticking stuff. Let me tell you something. All right.
That's
And
very
it
cool.
doesn't- and
Absolutely.
it doesn't void your warranty.
Well, the cool thing is, so they just kind of suck onto the bottom of your notebook, right? Which I think is extremely rad.
If the bottom of your notebook doesn't have vents and fans and all
Yeah,
sorts
there's
of other
that, right?
crap all over.
So check out on the camera. And then the nicest thing is ergonomic typing position. It sticks to the surface that you're typing on. But then the best part is elevates your machine so it stays cool. So none of that like hot MacBook Air or whatever the case is. And
Nice.
for $200, $199 for two cable yo-yos and this little thing, I
Yeah,
think it's
bargain.
an absolute win. At retail, dude. Not
Very cool.
wholesale, retail. So
Very nice.
If
I
you
like
speak
it.
to Toby, you'll be able to get it to this.
Indeed.
And they're
He never
happy as
pays
well
retail.
because manufacturing costs of about £8.
You know what? You know what? And like well done. Seriously,
No,
it's like
sure.
an
I know, it's
innovative
good.
product.
It's
Accessories
good.
is
It's
a
good.
great game to be
So
in.
you know what? Check out the other stuff Blue Lounge does as well. I've like been blown away by all of these tiny little clever things they've got. You know, they have a dock
Yeah.
that you plug into your conventional Apple USB charger. All right. Then instead of having a cable draped out of it and then your iPhone lying on the floor in your hotel room or lying on a desk,
Yeah.
you clip it into this thing and it turns it into like a standable little dock. So you plug it into the wall and it stands there, which
Very
is
cool.
like
Yeah, I've seen
tiny little
those.
things. Like somebody really took the time to think about some obvious problems, you know, that exist and
Or
worked
they
around
just
them.
read Lifehacker a lot.
Well, there's that too.
Can I quickly hijack the comment on all the cables and stuff?
Okay.
Another pick of the week, but in the coming weeks, getting back to the Samsung S3 for a moment, one of the great features it also brings to the party is wireless charging. So, I think
Oh,
that's
that's
going to be
right,
one of the killer
yes.
apps.
Okay. Very cool.
Before you say anything, Brett has set up his new iPad here next to my iPad too, and the screen is pretty darn good.
I really didn't believe it. Let me just say this,
It
Nick.
is-
You know what? I was like a
yeah.
naysayer. I'm like, blah blah blah. It's not going to be worth it, whatever the case. And I think that the LTE, you should really not pay for the LTE because you won't get to use it, and
Still get to use 3G on it. Though.
and B, it's while it's faster 3G, it's not all that much faster. The screen blows my mind. It
It's-
really, for like reading, I look at a lot. I read a lot of magazines on my iPad. It really
No, I have
changes
to
that whole
agree.
experience.
It's a good
fantastic.
screen, and it looks fantastic. But I still don't know if it's worth the extra $1,000.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
before we say goodbye, let me just mention that Joe Buerta has been watching the show. He's at Swim Geek on Twitter, and he just mentioned the Mixit geofencing payment solution I was talking about is called, I think you pronounce it Just Pay. It's GUST though, PAY. So GUST PAY. If you want to check out more about it, and it's at Just Pay on Twitter. So thanks for the tweet, Joe. And looks like some really awesome technology. All right, shall we wrap it up?
No
What
pick
else
from
is
you,
the
Sam.
week?
I did pick the Adobe Reader app.
Oh, all right,
Yeah.
okay.
And that's
Oh,
really-
something else that's worthwhile looking into maybe just over the past, over the next couple of days is Adobe is due to release Creative Suite 6 Creative Cloud, $50 a month. If you can find a way to like over a VPN get around the geolocation, you can get access to the entire Adobe
so retarded.
application suite for $50 a month and 20 gigs worth of
Who
cloud storage.
geolocks a cloud service for creative software where there's there's no licensing concern? They can make money from the whole world, and I'm sorry.
No.
Did I say they did something clever?
So that they can take all of the emerging markets, Simon, and gouge them in both eyes.
Yes, 'cause
with
we're
something
paying
blunt.
more, yeah.
Yeah. No, we'll pay lots more here.
I'm sorry, that's retarded. Adobe's retarded. Use the GIMP. All right. Let's wrap it up. Thanks for being here, Arthur Goldstuck.
Thank you, Simon Dingle, at Simon Dingle on Twitter, signing off from at R2G on Twitter.
Goodness gracious me.
plug.
We'll talk about our book project soon. Arthur and I have been
Indeed.
working on something with Toby Shapshak. That's Ted.
So you and Arthur have been working on something.
We'll probably lift the lid. Simon and I
Sorry,
will
Toby.
be talking together at the Franschhoek Literary Festival on Friday morning, and
That's
I
right.
think we'll probably lift the lid on it.
And we're talking
that
about
point.
the future of publishing, right?
The future of books.
Ta-da!
Ta-da!
Looking forward to sharing the stage with you again, Mr.
Likewise,
Goldstuck.
Mr. Dingle.
Nick Callegari from
Thank you.
DSTV Online at NCallegari
You
on
didn't
Twitter.
mention the Drifter or the Walker, which
It's-
are cool products.
I'm not an official spokesperson for the company. Everything I say here is my own thoughts.
Pasop quest watches sometimes.
Yeah, I know. Very careful.
Brett Haggard from Hypertext Media Communications. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
And that's it for this more serious than usual episode of the ZA Tech Show, although I think I'm going to name it Rant because that seems to be mostly what happened. So thanks for watching or listening. Our website, zatech.co.za. Get in touch with us. Join the IRC chat room anytime in the week. It's good fun. If you go to zatech.co.za/live, which is where we do our streaming, you can also access web chat access to the IRC there. Otherwise, we're on za.shadowfire.org and #ZATech. So check it out. And we'll be back next week. What, did I get it wrong, Bretsky?
No, you didn't.
Yay! Let's see if I can get the date right with the help of my Mac. It's Monday, 7 May. Oh,
What episode was this anyway?
208. Got that right too.
Very good.
We're on a roll tonight. Okay. Cheers.